Welcome, gentle soul, to a space that belongs entirely to you. Whether you're curled up beneath a warm blanket, taking a mindful walk beneath the sky, or simply sitting quietly at your desk, I want you to know that you are among friends here. There is no rush. There is nothing you must remember. This is a moment for you, just you, to breathe, to listen, and to let your mind gently expand. Take a moment, if you wish, to notice where you are. Notice your breath, the subtle sounds around you, and the gentle hum of your own presence. How are you feeling today? I invite you, in the most relaxed way, to acknowledge whatever mood or thought arises. There's no need to change anything. You are safe. This is a haven for curiosity and kindness, both towards yourself and the mysterious universe that surrounds us. In this quiet corner of the world, we're about to explore something remarkable, something that blends the unfathomable wonders of quantum physics with the simple, sometimes challenging art of moving forward in life. We're here not for another overwhelming productivity blueprint or a sermon on discipline. Instead, we'll be unraveling the hidden fabric of procrastination, where it comes from, why it feels so heavy, and how a shift in perspective might just help you break through the impossible. There's a certain magic in letting go of pressure. Tonight, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to take furious notes or memorize steps. This is not a test. Instead, consider this a quiet stroll through a moonlit garden, where each idea is a lantern illuminating new corners of your mind. The world outside can wait for a little while. And so, together, we enter this journey. A journey woven from threads of curiosity, science, self-compassion, and awe for the mysteries of reality itself. Our focus is procrastination, but not as you've heard it described before. We will not wage war against ourselves. We will not hammer at the walls of resistance with sheer force. We are here to question, truly question, the very foundations of why, in the face of our deepest intentions, movement so often feels impossible. Why does every proven productivity hack crumble in the face of a blank page? Why does the heart race and the mind spiral, even when you know exactly what needs to be done? Why do you see the door wide open, yet remain rooted to the spot, unable to step through? It isn't because you are lazy. It isn't a flaw in your character. Perhaps the answer lies not in psychology, but in the weird, wondrous laws of the universe itself. For a long time, society has painted procrastination as a simple matter of willpower, a weakness to be crushed by discipline. Yet if you look closely, the pattern reveals something stranger. The harder you push, the heavier the resistance. The more you struggle, the thicker the fog. This is not a battle you can win through brute strength. Maybe you've felt this deep in your bones. A suspicion that something deeper, something more mysterious, is at play. Tonight, we're not seeking comfort in cliché advice. Instead, we're opening the door to quantum thinking. The universe itself does not always play by the rules of common sense. Particles pass through solid walls. Time warps and folds. The smallest nudge can set off a cosmic avalanche. What if these paradoxes contain clues for us? Clues about how to move, how to change, how to tunnel through the impossible barriers that hold us back. In this series, we will question the stories you've been told about effort, about time, about what it means to be stuck. We will explore the paradoxes and glitches hidden beneath everyday experience. We'll discover the quantum tunneling move, a subtle shift so small, so gentle, that it slips beneath the radar of your resistance. This is not magic. This is not hype. This is about unlocking the strange, elegant logic of the universe and letting it work for you, not against you. You are not alone in this struggle. Billions of people, across cultures and centuries, have faced the same invisible wall. The urge to postpone, the weight of inertia, the sudden flood of self-doubt. It's all part of the human condition. There's nothing wrong with you. In fact, the very qualities that make you sensitive to this struggle may also make you exquisitely tuned to beauty, depth, and discovery. That's why you're here. Over the coming chapters, we will move gently but relentlessly through the shadows of procrastination. You will hear questions that unsettle, ideas that don't quite fit into the boxes you've been given. This is intentional. It is in these moments of tension, of unresolved contradiction, that real change begins, not as an act of violence against yourself, but as an invitation to explore what has always been possible. Tonight, we shatter the myth of willpower. We're going quantum. But first, can you trust what you're about to see? You're welcome to listen in any way that feels right to you. Let your mind wander. Let your heart rest. This isn't about fixing your life tonight. This is about wonder, about allowing a little light to seep in where you least expect it. Let the ideas settle quietly, like snowflakes on your windowsill. There's no hurry. There's no final exam. You're already in exactly the right place. And now, let us begin. If procrastination is a choice, why does it feel like a force of nature? Something you can't escape even when you know the consequences. Why do you see the exit but never move? Gently settle into your awareness as the world outside falls quiet. The air feels heavy, somehow different, as if holding its breath. A question emerges, not as an accusation, but as a puzzle. If procrastination is truly a choice, why does it feel so unbreakable? Why does it loom over you with the weight and certainty of a thunderstorm, indifferent to your best intentions or your cleverest plans? You know the script. The task sits in front of you, plain as day. The path is clear, the stakes are known, and yet, every cell in your body protests. You glance at the clock, feel the pulse of urgency, the slow creep of dread. Why is it, then, that you see the exit, the obvious solution, yet find yourself rooted, unable to take even the smallest step forward? Let's step quietly into this paradox. In the everyday world, we are taught that decisions are simple acts of will. You want something, so you act. Yet, in the silent theater of your mind, another story plays out. You know what's required. You even know how to begin. But an invisible field hums between you and the first keystroke, the first brushstroke, the first word. It is as if you stand in a vast open plain, staring at a door that leads to freedom. No lock, no guards, nothing stopping you, except a force as unyielding as gravity. It doesn't make sense, not if you listen to the ordinary logic of motivation. If the path is open, why not walk it? Why do you stand, unmoving, as the minutes turn to hours and the hours to days? If consequences are so clear, if rewards are so obvious, why does the will to move dissolve into mist? Here is the riddle at the heart of your experience. Procrastination is painted as a simple matter of laziness, a lack of discipline, a moral failing. But if you listen quietly, if you really feel into the moment, you sense something much stranger. It's not about not wanting to move. It's about not being able to, as if some deep law of nature holds you in place. Even the most heartfelt intentions shatter on impact with this invisible wall. Consider how the world perceives freedom. The absence of barriers is supposed to be liberating, isn't it? Yet, the most suffocating prison can have no walls at all. Procrastination is a room without doors, a cage without bars. You pace its boundary, you test its limits, but when you try to leave, the air thickens, time distorts, and the ground seems to shift beneath your feet. Why do you see the exit but never move? This is not a weakness of character. It is not a simple refusal to act. It is a force as elemental as the wind, as inevitable as the tides. You want to move, you know you should move, but something ancient, something buried, holds you back. This is where the story begins to twist, where the rules of cause and effect seem to glitch. If freedom is defined by the absence of obstacles, then why does absolute freedom so often paralyze? If the cage is invisible, how do you know you are trapped at all? Pause for a moment. Allow this question to echo in your mind. Let yourself feel its weight. Do not rush for answers. Sometimes, the truest discoveries are the ones that make you most uncomfortable. Procrastination is not the absence of action. It is the presence of resistance, a silent, wordless pressure that hardens in the face of every intention. The harder you try to will your way out, the thicker the air becomes. The walls close in, not with a slam, but with a slow, suffocating squeeze. Think of those moments when you know exactly what you need to do. The email to send, the chapter to write, the decision to make. You stand at the threshold, feeling the pull of what waits on the other side. You can almost taste the relief, the pride, the freedom that comes with crossing over. Yet your feet remain anchored. Your hand hovers above the keys, Your mind spins stories to distract and soothe. This is not simply a matter of lacking grit. It is not a gap in your training or a failure of self-control. It is an elemental force, one that respects neither logic nor desire. Why does it persist? Why does it have such power? The answer lies deeper, in the tangled roots of consciousness and the hidden rules of the universe. To call procrastination a choice is to ignore its true nature. Choice implies freedom, possibility, the ability to say yes or no. But the force you encounter here is relentless. It does not negotiate. It does not bargain. It simply is. The more you fight, the heavier it becomes. Pause. Take a gentle breath. Let your attention rest on the question, not to solve it, but to feel its texture. If you are not weak, not broken, not failing, then what are you? Why does the exit remain just out of reach, even when you know with every fiber of your being that you must step through? There is a wordless wisdom in this struggle. It is trying to teach you something that logic alone cannot capture. Sometimes, the refusal to move is not about fear or laziness, but about a hidden law that governs your inner world. If procrastination is a choice, why does it feel like a force of nature? Why do you see the exit but never move? Hold these questions gently, as you might hold a fragile bird in your hands. There is no shame here, no accusation. Only the invitation to witness the paradox for what it truly is. A riddle with teeth, a puzzle with no easy answer. Tonight, you do not need to solve the riddle. You only need to notice it. Notice how it moves in your body, how it clouds your thoughts, how it shapes your days. This noticing is not a passive act. It is the beginning of a shift, a quiet opening, a whisper of something new. Next, we will begin to unravel the strange machinery behind this resistance. We'll journey into the hidden science of stuckness, into the very heart of why your brain, built for movement, sometimes chooses stillness above all else. And yet, as we approach the machinery, the question lingers. If your brain is built to move, why does it lock you down at the moment of greatest need? What if every logical reason for your inertia is just a cover story? Let the paradox stay alive. Let the question remain open. There is no rush, no need to leap ahead. For now, rest here in the quiet power of not knowing. If your brain is built to move, why does it lock you down at the moment of greatest need? What if every logical reason for your inertia is just a cover story? Step quietly into the landscape of your mind, a place where thoughts drift like clouds and intentions rise and fall like the sun. Underneath this serene surface, complex machinery is at work. Deep in the shadows, networks of cells, chemicals, and ancient instincts operate with astonishing precision, shaping every choice, every hesitation, every sudden stillness. Yet, when you need yourself most, when the moment calls for action, these finely tuned circuits seize up. You are built to move, but in the most crucial moments, you freeze. The paradox deepens. Why would a mind, designed by eons of evolution to adapt and survive, refuse to budge when movement is survival? Neurons fire, signals travel, energy surges. The design of the human brain is breathtaking. You are the descendant of hunters and gatherers who could not afford to pause when danger neared. Every cell in your body should propel you forward, out of danger toward possibility. Yet you sit, paralyzed, not by tigers or storms, but by an email, a blank document, a single daunting task. If you listen to the usual explanations, laziness, fear, distraction, they sound simple, almost plausible. But each rings hollow when you experience the depth of your own resistance. Under a microscope, the brain reveals an astonishing tangle of circuits. Some are dedicated to movement, some to planning, others to memory or desire. These circuits fire and weave together, building a dance that results in the miracle of action. But there are times when the music stops. The energy fades. You know what must be done, and yet you remain still. In those moments, logic evaporates. The logical reasons you repeat. I'm just tired. It's not the right time. I don't feel ready. Become stories you whisper to yourself, stories meant to explain a much deeper mystery. Look beneath the stories. There, the real science of stuckness emerges. The brain is not a machine of pure reason, but a system built for safety. Every intention passes through filters, ancient, silent systems that measure risk, predict pain, and defend against the unknown. This is the shadow kingdom of inertia, where every desire is weighed against a million hidden threats. Your mind's most ancient command: stay safe, do nothing that might lead to pain. When a task hints at failure, embarrassment, or disappointment, these circuits flare with warning. It is not conscious. It is not even rational. It is simply the brain doing what it has always done, keeping you alive even when aliveness requires risk. You feel the push to act, then the pull to stop. In those seconds, your mind invents reasons, endless logical reasons for your paralysis. I'm not inspired. I need more research. I'll start after one more cup of coffee. But these are only echoes, explanations crafted after the fact. The real decisions are made in silence, deep below thought, by the same machinery that once kept your ancestors hidden from the saber-tooth. Every attempt to move is met with a whisper of danger. The unknown, the untried, the unfinished, all radiate a low, thrumming warning. Even the most ordinary action can trigger this silent alarm. You sense it in your body, the flutter in your stomach, the weight in your chest, the subtle tension in your jaw. The body knows before the mind does. The science of stuckness is written in nerves and muscles, as much as in thoughts. This is the strange symmetry at the heart of the human mind. The part of you that dreams is constantly tangled with the part that defends. Progress and protection, action and inertia, locked in an endless embrace. You plan your triumphs, but your mind's first duty is to keep you from harm. The more important the goal, the greater the hidden threat. The more powerful your vision, the more fierce the resistance. This is not a flaw. It is not a mistake. It is your inheritance, carried in the fabric of your being. Notice how often your reasons for inaction shift. Today it's exhaustion, tomorrow it's confusion, next week it's lack of time. The content changes, but the experience remains the same. A silent hand holding you back, cloaked in new excuses each day. When you look honestly, you see that the explanations are endless, but the stuckness remains. So what is the brain protecting you from? Not lions or cliffs, but the subtler dangers of modern life. Failure, shame, wasted effort. Your mind is a gatekeeper, trained by a million generations to pause, to wait, to hesitate, just long enough to keep you safe. Yet, in the stillness, a greater danger grows. Opportunities drift by, dreams gather dust, potential fades. The very system designed to keep you alive becomes the force that holds you captive. Procrastination, then, is not a lapse in logic. It is the triumph of ancient circuitry, fighting to keep you from imagined pain. The moment of hesitation is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that your inner guardian has sounded the alarm. The stories you tell yourself afterward, about laziness, about needing more time, are shadows, not substance. This knowledge is not meant to comfort or to scold. It is meant to disrupt. If your brain, built to move, locks you down at the moment of greatest need, then something fundamental is at work. Your best intentions are not always the deciding vote. Your cleverest plans do not always win. There is something older, deeper, less visible pulling the strings. Let the paradox trouble you. Let it raise more questions than it answers. You are not a machine. You are not a list of habits or a set of rational choices. You are a living contradiction, built to run, yet prone to stillness, capable of genius yet captured by hesitation. The science of stuckness is not a map with clear lines. It is a mystery, a puzzle whose pieces never quite fit. Feel the honesty of this. Rest in it for a moment. There is relief in seeing the truth, even when the truth is strange. You are not failing the laws of nature. You are obeying them, perhaps too well. Your resistance is a shadow cast by the very circuits that made your ancestors survivors. Yet, if every logical reason for your inertia is just a cover story, then what else is happening beneath the surface? Who or what is truly pulling the strings in your moments of greatest resistance? What hidden agent, what invisible hand, controls the dance of stillness and motion? Next, we will step into the dim-lit theater where these hidden puppeteers work, the invisible hand that holds you back. Now you know the mechanics of stuckness, but who is pulling the strings? If motivation can't be summoned, what's stopping you from smashing the glass? Let the question linger. Stay with the tension. The answer, when it comes, may change everything you think you know about your own mind. Now you know the mechanics of stuckness, but who is pulling the strings? If motivation can't be summoned, what's stopping you from smashing the glass? The mind is a labyrinth, and you have only begun to wander its halls. Stuckness is not just a matter of wiring or chemistry. It is also the realm of unseen forces, patterns so deep you rarely notice them. The machinery of resistance is visible under the right microscope, but what about the operator? Who or what directs this orchestra of hesitation? What hidden power decides when you freeze, when you run, when you remain anchored as life passes by? Sit with this for a moment. You know the machinery exists. You have felt its gears catch, its levers lock. Yet there is something more, an agency, a will, an intelligence behind the curtain. This is the invisible hand. It is not a villain, not a saboteur, but an ancient protector, older than thought, older than fear. It moves in silence. It works with the precision of instinct, the ruthlessness of evolution. Some call it the subconscious, others call it conditioning. You might experience it as an inner voice, a sudden chill of doubt, a pressure that appears just as you resolve to act. Whatever its name, its power is undeniable. It can override the most urgent plans, derail the brightest ambition, reduce your best intentions to dust. No matter how passionately you summon motivation, no matter how many tricks you use, the glass remains unbroken, the wall unbreached. How does this invisible hand work? It does not argue. It does not bargain. It simply pulls you back, using the oldest currency in the universe: emotion. When you try to force yourself forward, it whispers danger. When you threaten to leap, it floods you with 1,000 subtle anxieties. It is an artist of sabotage, and its palette is your own nervous system. Motivation, that celebrated spark, is often powerless here. You can wait for inspiration, for excitement, for some magical push from within. But when the hand tightens, nothing comes. You can try to talk yourself into action, stacking reasons, rewards, consequences. The hand remains unmoved. It is not persuaded by logic. It answers to a deeper law. Look at the times you have tried to summon motivation. Notice how often it fails. The task remains untouched, the dream deferred. You grow frustrated. You judge yourself. But the hand holding you back is untouched by your judgments. It only knows one thing: keep you in place until safety is assured. This is the great contradiction of self-improvement. You are told to summon willpower, to stoke your desire, to light a fire under your feet. But the invisible hand is not moved by force. It cannot be threatened, bribed, or cajoled. The more you struggle, the more it tightens its grip. The glass remains unsmashed, the barrier intact. To understand this, you must see procrastination not as a personal failure, but as a cosmic drama, a struggle between the new and the old, the conscious and the unconscious, the will and the weight of history. The hand that holds you back is the sum of 1,000 forgotten lessons. Times you failed and were hurt, times you tried and were punished, times you hoped and were disappointed. It remembers everything. Its mission is not progress, but survival. You may notice how its warnings feel real. Don't start, you'll fail. Wait, you're not ready. If you try and it doesn't work, you'll lose more than you gain. These are not thoughts. They are reflexes, primal surges of caution. The invisible hand does not care about your dreams, only about your continued existence, your preservation at all costs. And so, you remain trapped behind the glass, seeing your future shimmering on the other side, unable to break through. Not for lack of desire, but because the hand is convinced. Stillness is safer than movement. You might rage against it, reason with it, try to outsmart it. All the while, it waits, patient and unyielding, certain that its caution is justified. Is it possible to bypass this ancient protector? Is there a way to slip past its grip, to move without waking its fears? These are not questions with easy answers. They demand a new way of thinking, a new relationship with your own mind. Notice, too, how the invisible hand shapes not just your actions, but your identity. Over time, you begin to believe the stories it whispers. You're lazy. You're not disciplined. You're just not a doer. These are not facts, but scars left by the repeated tightening of the hand. Each failed attempt becomes evidence, each day of inaction another line in the script. Yet, beneath this script, a different possibility stirs. The invisible hand is powerful, but not all-powerful. There are moments, fleeting, rare, when you slip its grasp. A sudden laugh, a wave of music, an unexpected joy, and you move effortlessly before the hand can react. In those moments, you glimpse a new kind of freedom, a freedom not won by force, but by bypassing the very game the hand wants to play. But if motivation can't be summoned, if logic can't persuade, what's stopping you from smashing the glass? What holds you, body and soul, in this state of paralysis? Next, we will examine the trap hidden within effort itself. When you try harder, when you bring all your force to bear, does the prison weaken? Or does it become even more unbreakable? If working harder only strengthens the prison, what happens when you try to break free? Can your best intentions make your cage stronger? Stay with this riddle. The answer is not where you expect. If working harder only strengthens the prison, what happens when you try to break free? Can your best intentions make your cage stronger? Pause. Take a quiet breath as you stand at the threshold of effort, muscles coiled, intentions sharpened. The world has trained you well. When stuck, push harder. When resistance rises, bear down. The prescription is always the same. More grit, more sweat, more relentless force. The myth of modern living is that nothing resists the hammer of determination. Yet what happens in the secret theater of your own experience? You have summoned every ounce of resolve. You've gritted your teeth, drawn lines in the sand, promised yourself that this time will be different. But when the moment arrives, the walls do not crumble, they harden. Effort is supposed to be the solution. It is sung in every anthem, inscribed in every motivational speech. Yet there is a strange, secret law at work. The more you strain, the thicker the air becomes. The harder you fight, the more slippery the task grows. What explains this contradiction? Why does every attempt to shatter the barrier seem to reinforce its power? Each blow rebounds, echoing through your nerves and your spirit. Imagine those times when you sat before your work, jaw set, determined to push through. You force yourself to begin, dragging your mind across the coals of resistance. But the deeper you press, the more your body rebels. Your vision blurs, your energy leaks away, your thoughts scatter like startled birds. Willpower, once your weapon, becomes a chain. The harder you pull, the tighter it bites. This is not an accident. The invisible hand, that silent guardian exposed in the last chapter, interprets effort as threat. To the oldest parts of your mind, the surge of determination is a signal of danger, a warning that you are about to cross into hostile territory. When you raise your weapons, the prison responds in kind. Every drop of adrenaline is met with a tightening of the cage. So the paradox grows. The more you try to break free, the more deeply you entrench yourself. Each failed attempt is added to the ledger, a record your subconscious keeps with ruthless honesty. See? It whispers. You tried and it hurt. You tried and you failed. Over time, these scars grow into armor, and the walls that once merely blocked you now imprison you. Effort is not always the hero of the story. In the world outside, pushing through can yield results. But within, in the delicate theater of your own nervous system, effort can become the enemy. It feeds the narrative of struggle, convincing the mind that action is always painful, always a fight. The more you treat your work as a battlefield, the more resistance you will encounter. Notice what happens to your thoughts when you lean into effort. They fracture and multiply. Doubt creeps in, anxiety swells, fatigue laces every intention. The act of pushing transforms a task into an ordeal. Your best intentions, once clear and luminous, become shrouded in self-doubt and exhaustion. The cage, invisible but unbreakable, grows even stronger. Why does this happen? At the heart of the paradox lies a single truth. The subconscious mind is not moved by pressure, but by permission. It responds not to threats, but to safety. When you force yourself, you awaken old alarms. The ancient machinery of survival cannot distinguish between a looming predator and a looming deadline. Effort, when perceived as battle, only tells the subconscious to raise its shields. There is a lesson hiding here, uncomfortable and unfamiliar. If working harder only strengthens the prison, what is left? Is surrender the only way out? The question lingers, sharp and unresolved. You may sense, beneath the armor of effort, a longing for gentleness. A different way of moving, softer, subtler, perhaps even invisible. But your culture rarely honors such wisdom. You are taught to glorify hustle, to measure your worth in sweat and struggle. Anything less feels like failure, weakness, betrayal. Yet the laws of the mind are not always the laws of the marketplace. Inwardly, force can be poison. Resistance feeds on pressure, drawing strength from every failed attempt to overpower it. Consider the most persistent procrastinators, not the lazy, but the driven. Those who care most, who try hardest, who demand perfection. For them, effort is both shield and sword, but it is also the weight that keeps them anchored in place. Each day they resolve to conquer themselves, and each day the struggle deepens. The story repeats, gathering momentum until the very idea of starting becomes unbearable. Here, best intentions become shackles. The more you long to move, the more painful the effort becomes. It is a kind of psychological quicksand. The harder you thrash, the faster you sink. The only thing left is stillness, paralysis, resignation. This is the true trap, the hidden cost of effort misunderstood. You have seen this play out in your own mind. Tasks once simple now loom as mountains. Small beginnings feel enormous, every step weighed down by history. Your intentions, bright and sincere, become ghosts that haunt the edges of your awareness. The more you want to escape, the more impossible escape seems. This is not a failure of character, nor a lack of discipline. It is the echo of a law as old as life itself. Resistance cannot be shattered by force. The prison, sensing attack, simply hardens. The more you struggle, the stronger it grows. So what remains? If you cannot fight your way out, is there a hidden door? The world of physics offers a riddle here, a phenomenon so bizarre, so counterintuitive, that it seems almost magical. In the quantum world, particles trapped by insurmountable barriers sometimes escape not by force, but by something stranger. They slip through the wall, untouched, unbroken. The process is not about effort, but about possibility. Hold this thought for a moment. Let it unsettle you. Is it possible that the way out of your own invisible prison is not through greater effort, but through a kind of elegant sidestep, a bypass so subtle, so unassuming, that resistance never even stirs? The paradox is complete. Your best intentions, your greatest efforts, can make your cage stronger. Yet, in the tiniest act, the quietest movement, lies the seed of freedom. This is not resignation. It is not defeat. It is the hint of a new law, a new way of moving. Next, we will peer into this quantum paradox. If the wall is unbreakable, how can a particle, how can you slip through untouched? Is there a glitch in reality hiding a shortcut we're not supposed to use? Let that contradiction ripple through you. Sometimes, the only way out is through a law you've never been taught to trust. If the wall is unbreakable, how can a particle, how can you slip through untouched? Is there a glitch in reality hiding a shortcut we're not supposed to use? In the hush of the quantum world, the laws you trust begin to bend and flicker. Here, particles ignore the boundaries that stump the ordinary mind. A wall, solid and absolute, becomes nothing more than a suggestion. With no warning, a particle disappears on one side and reappears on the other. The world does not end, the rules are not broken, yet the impossible has occurred. The phenomenon is called quantum tunneling, and it upends everything you think you know about barriers. Pause to let this seep in. The universe itself is not as rigid as it seems. At the smallest scales, certainty unravels, and what cannot be crossed can, in fact, be passed through. The rules you learned, effort, force, overcoming, all fail in this strange theater. The particle does not batter the wall. It does not shatter or leap. It simply tunnels, silently, vanishing from one realm and appearing in another. The metaphor is as beautiful as it is disturbing. You have been taught to attack your barriers, to wage war on resistance. But here, a new possibility reveals itself. What if the walls of your procrastination are not as real as they seem? What if, at the deepest level, effort is not the answer? What if the mind, like the universe, contains hidden passageways, tunnels invisible to ordinary sight? In moments of clarity, you may have sensed this. A task that seemed impossible is suddenly begun, almost without conscious thought. You slip into motion not through force, but through a change so subtle you barely notice. The wall remains, but you are no longer trapped. The rules you lived by, hard work, pressure, guilt, fade to silence. This is the paradox. The wall is unbreakable, yet you move through it. The mind, like the quantum field, is not always governed by force, but by possibility. Change does not always arrive through sweat and struggle. Sometimes it comes in a breath, a glance, a moment of stillness. The shortcut, the glitch in reality, is not found in the methods you have been taught. It is found in the unguarded moment, the micro-movement, the willingness to act without fanfare or pressure. The mind, faced with a tiny, harmless action, does not summon resistance. The invisible hand stays silent. The prison stays asleep. In that space, you tunnel. What does this look like in practice? You set aside the grand plan, the battle with your own will. Instead, you let yourself take one absurdly small step. A movement so slight, so easy, that it barely registers. You open the document, but do not write. You gather your materials, but do not force yourself to begin. The wall does not react. In this space, something shifts. It is not magic, not superstition, but a natural law. Resistance, designed to stop the charge of armies, is useless against the mouse-sized act. The subconscious cannot be threatened by a move so small it barely counts. You pass through the barrier, not with a shout, but with a whisper. This is the paradox of instant escape. The rules you've learned do not apply. The unbreakable wall is no longer an enemy. You have slipped through a loophole in the code, a shortcut hidden in plain sight. Effort was never the answer. The secret is gentleness, precision, and audacity in miniature. You may wonder if this is real. Can such a tiny act truly shift the tides of your life? The answer, unsettling as it is yes. Across the universe, great changes begin with impossible smallness. The sun is lit by the tunneling of particles. Evolution turns on microscopic mutations. Your own life is changed, not by the epic battles you fight, but by the smallest acts you choose to repeat. Let this disturb your sense of logic. The wall is unbreakable, yet you pass through. You are not meant to explain this, but to trust in its strangeness. There is a glitch in reality, a hidden passage reserved for those willing to move in whispers, not in shouts. Next, we will test the truth of time itself. You've been told 5 minutes is insignificant. But what if that tiny sliver of time can collapse decades of resistance? Is time the prison or the key? Stay with the riddle. In quantum tunneling, possibility is not earned. It is accepted. You've been told 5 minutes is insignificant. But what if that tiny sliver of time can collapse decades of resistance? Is time the prison or the key? Take a slow, deliberate breath. In the measured silence, notice how the mind tallies hours, how it builds monuments to time's importance. The clock rules over you. Deadlines, appointments, the steady tick echoing beneath every hope and hesitation. You are taught from childhood to worship at the altar of productivity, where only long hours and monumental effort are seen as worthy. 5 minutes? A joke, an insult to ambition. Nothing of meaning, you're told, can happen in so small a span. Pause here. Let your attention drift to all the beginnings you have denied yourself, waiting always for enough time, for a stretch wide enough to justify the leap. I need an afternoon, you think, or I'll start next week when I'm free. Minutes trickle away, each one dismissed as too small to matter, while days accumulate into regret. This is the great lie, that progress requires vast oceans of uninterrupted time. The world rewards those who appear busy, who announce their marathon work sessions, who frame their growth as a saga of endurance. 5 minutes becomes invisible, a gap between the real moments, discarded as the scraps of living. Yet quietly, invisibly, those 5 minutes contain a power no one ever explained to you. What if time is not the obstacle? What if the prison you feel, the invisible wall you've learned to fear, is not made of hours and days, but of your beliefs about what those hours are worth? The clock is not a gatekeeper. It is a threshold. The problem is not that you have too little time. The problem is what you imagine time must be before you are allowed to move. Notice how the story of time shapes your choices. You plan the perfect moment, then postpone it again and again. You wait for a block of time large enough to make real progress. In doing so, you push possibility farther and farther from reach. Minutes, those tiny fragments of existence, slip by unnoticed. You hold out for grand gestures, but the future shrinks with every delay. Consider this: the universe itself is not built in hours, but in instants. Stars ignite in moments, molecules collide in flashes. Life changes forever in the briefest spark. Time at its deepest level is granular, constructed not from epic stretches but from tiny, indivisible beats. Every big thing you have ever achieved began in a single, almost laughably small moment. The 5-minute window is not a punishment. It is not a consolation prize. It is the doorway the universe keeps open for you, no matter how tightly the rest of your life is packed. It is a hack in the architecture of resistance. The mind, when confronted with a demand for hours, rebels. When asked only for a sliver, it shrugs, relaxes, lets you pass. 5 minutes does not wake the sleeping guard of your subconscious. 5 minutes is beneath notice. In those tiny stretches, change begins. Feel the unease of this revelation. It contradicts everything you've been taught about effort and success. If 5 minutes is enough, then what other limits have you accepted without question? What other prisons are made not of reality, but of belief? Reflect on the moments when you have accidentally moved forward. The email drafted in 2 minutes, the sketch begun on a napkin, the phone call made just before you left the house. These moments, small and unplanned, carry disproportionate weight. They break the trance of waiting. They disprove the myth that change must arrive dressed in grandeur. Here, in the gentle embrace of 5 minutes, something miraculous happens. Action becomes possible. The wall of resistance, built to withstand armies, is useless against an act so small it barely registers. Your mind does not marshal its defenses. You slip through. In the space of a breath, you are moving. And once you have moved, even once the universe has changed, you are no longer entirely stuck. You are a person in motion, however tiny that motion may be. Let this truth settle into your bones. Time, as you have known it, is an illusion. It is not an ocean to be crossed, but a string of drops, each containing the potential for a different world. 5 minutes can change everything, not because you accomplish something spectacular, but because you prove to yourself that the door is not really locked. This is not about lowering your standards or accepting less than your best. It is about escaping the tyranny of perfection, the belief that only grand beginnings can lead to grand results. 5 minutes is not the end. It is the crack in the wall. It is the beginning of possibility. Feel the implications ripple through you. If 5 minutes is enough to collapse decades of resistance, then all your plans, all your excuses, all your calculations are suddenly suspect. You are no longer waiting for the perfect hour, the perfect mood, the perfect you. The conditions will never be perfect. The present moment, in its ordinariness, is always enough. Next, let the riddle deepen. Why do your greatest ideas appear only when you're doing nothing? Why does your worst state hold the door to your best work? Let the question echo. Time is neither enemy nor savior. It is the gap you slip through, the loophole in your story. The prison is not as real as it seemed. Why do your greatest ideas appear only when you're doing nothing? Why does your worst state hold the door to your best work? Settle into a gentle awareness. Notice the pause, the liminal state before action, when you are not yet productive, not yet in motion, caught somewhere between intention and inertia. This is the territory that most advice urges you to avoid, to conquer with discipline, to overcome. You are taught to distrust this place, to equate it with laziness or waste. Yet, in these quiet spaces, where nothing has begun, there is a peculiar magic. Something waits in the stillness. Consider how often your most interesting ideas arrive when you least expect them. The flash of insight in the shower, the sudden solution while gazing from a train window, the melody that forms while staring into space, long before you ever touch an instrument. Genius is rarely summoned on command. It slips in through the cracks, sidestepping the rituals of effort and intention. The unstarted moment, the one you dread, is also the portal through which surprise and brilliance enter your world. Why does this happen? What is it about the idle mind, the so-called unproductive state, that draws inspiration so reliably? The answer is not found in the usual stories of hustle or grit. It lies deeper in the architecture of consciousness itself. When you are still, when you have not yet forced yourself into action, your mind is open. It is not defending against the pressure to perform. The guards are down. Old patterns loosen their grip. In this gentle suspension, the mind becomes porous, receptive to what usually hides beneath the surface. Here paradox reigns. The state you most fear, of not beginning, of being lost or behind, is the very state that opens the door to novelty and discovery. The more you chase genius, the further it runs. The more you relax into idleness, the more easily it comes. This is not about giving up, but about giving in to the rhythm of your own mind. Creativity, it turns out, does not thrive on command. It emerges from the silent undercurrents, the background hum of the unoccupied mind. Notice, too, how the urge to begin is often tainted by anxiety. You brace yourself for work, imagining that only through struggle can anything worthwhile emerge. Yet, the truly remarkable insights, the symphonies, the breakthroughs, the new connections, rarely arrive at the peak of effort. They drift in when you are distracted, when you have let go of the need to produce, when your defenses are down. This is the secret hidden in procrastination's shadow. The moments you label as wasted are often the seedbed of your deepest originality. The mind, left to wander, explores territory forbidden to the focused will. Old memories surface. Wild associations form. The internal critic, the one who demands results, falls silent. In that brief freedom, something astonishing becomes possible. Why do you resist this state? Why does it feel so dangerous to linger in the unknown, to admit that you have not begun? Fear, mostly fear that idleness will stretch on forever, that you will never move, that possibility will rot before it can bloom. Yet, again and again, experience contradicts this fear. The blank page, the empty studio, the silent phone, all feel like traps, but within them is hidden a different kind of power. The symphony that is not started can be anything. The act not yet taken can change the world. Society has little patience for this ambiguity. You are rewarded for output, for proof, for progress you can measure. The silent garden where ideas grow unseen is ignored, even despised. Yet, every artist, every inventor, every thinker knows the truth. The fertile void, terrifying as it is not the enemy of creation. It is its birthplace. There is more. The state you most dread, the feeling of being stuck, blocked, unable to move, carries within it a potential energy. It is uncomfortable, yes. It itches and stings. But if you sit with it, if you do not rush to fill the silence with noise, you discover a wellspring beneath the discomfort. The mind, unforced, gathers its fragments, reassembles its puzzles, prepares for a leap you cannot foresee. Why does your worst state hold the door to your best work? Because the mind, like the universe, expands in the absence of pressure. The unstarted moment, when accepted, becomes a canvas so vast that anything can appear. The act of waiting, of not beginning, is not mere stalling. It is incubation. Every great leap forward is preceded by stillness, by apparent failure, by time spent on the edge of the unknown. This truth is not comfortable. It is not what you are told by those who worship hustle and grind. But the evidence is everywhere, written into the history of discovery and invention. The breakthrough rarely comes from the heart of the storm. comes from the eye, from the quietest center. If you allow yourself to linger in this state, not forever but for long enough, you will sense the gathering of possibility. The urge to act will return, not as a whip, but as an invitation. The ideas that emerge will not be forced but offered. The music that flows will not be strained, but natural, inevitable. The symphony you feared would never begin reveals itself, note by note, in the space where you dared to do nothing. Here is the riddle, unresolved and alive. The worst state is often the womb of your best work. The mind's idleness, so feared, is also the mind's freedom. Genius is not summoned. It is welcomed. Let this truth unsettle your habits. If the moments you label failure to begin are actually the cradle of all beginning, what else have you misunderstood? What other parts of your mind are waiting for permission to wander, to dream, to rest before they create? Next, the tension will twist again. If movement is freedom, why does the first step feel more dangerous than standing still? Now that you know how to begin, why does every cell in your body resist? The unstarted symphony is not emptiness. It is anticipation. It is the doorway to your greatest work, if you can bear to wait and listen. If movement is freedom, why does the first step feel more dangerous than standing still? Now that you know how to begin, why does every cell in your body resist? There is a quiet kind of terror that rises just as change becomes possible. You have lingered on the edge, studied your resistance, watched your ideas stir in the stillness. You have glimpsed the tunnel, the path through the impossible wall, and sensed the truth. One small motion is all it would take to slip beyond the prison. And yet, the prospect of movement does not liberate. It frightens. Momentum, promised as the cure to all paralysis, is suddenly the most menacing thing in the room. Why does this happen? Why, now that you have learned the secret of gentle beginnings, does your body clench, your chest tighten, your mind summon 1,000 subtle alarms? The answer is buried deep in the paradoxes of being alive. Stillness, for all its discomfort, is known. Inertia is familiar, predictable, even safe. The moment you shift, no matter how gently, you invite the unknown. You set chaos in motion. You declare, in a language older than words, that something is about to change. Freedom is not always what it seems. The invitation to move, to escape the old gravity, comes laced with risk. The first step, tiny as it may be, is a leap into uncertainty. The wall you thought you wanted to pass through suddenly looks comforting from this side. Movement means losing control. It means letting go of the defenses you've built, the excuses that have shielded you, the comfort of imagining that someday is always available. Inaction, by contrast, promises nothing, but it also asks nothing of you. This is the terror of momentum. Not that you might fail, but that you might succeed. That the world will shift, and with it, your sense of self. The smallest action is a betrayal of inertia. It is a vote for change. Every cell in your body senses the stakes, even if your mind denies it. To move is to surrender the quiet, suffocating safety of the known for the wildness of what could be. Let yourself feel this. Recall the sensations that arise in the seconds before you finally start. A nervous flutter, a spike of heat, the desperate urge to retreat into distractions. The task ahead grows monstrous in your imagination. Your mind offers one final, desperate barrage of reasons to wait. Just a little more preparation, one more moment of comfort. Tomorrow, perhaps. This is not mere habit. It is the body's last stand, the subconscious unleashing its arsenal to defend against change. But what exactly is being defended? Underneath the anxiety, there is often an old fear that movement will expose you, that it will reveal your imperfections, that you will be judged, that you will lose the protective cloak of not yet. So long as you have not begun, you can imagine infinite versions of success. Once you move, the infinite collapses into the actual. The fantasy is replaced by risk, and risk, no matter how small, is a threat the old brain cannot ignore. Momentum, then, is not just a force of physics or productivity. It is a force that collides with the oldest circuits of your being. Your biology is tuned to seek safety, to minimize threat, to preserve energy until absolutely necessary. The first step, however small, announces that necessity has arrived. The world is about to change and you are the cause. Yet, in the same moment, a strange power gathers. Beneath the fear, beneath the arguments to delay, there is a pulse of energy, a potential waiting to be released. The universe rewards movement, not because movement is always right, but because it is alive. Stillness is only safe for as long as the world is unchanging. The moment you step forward, you are joining the dance of everything that grows, evolves, becomes. Why, then, does every cell in your body resist? The body is not the enemy. It is a messenger. It remembers the pain of past failures, the sting of disappointment, the embarrassment of trying and not succeeding. Each memory is stored not just in your mind, but in your flesh, your breath, your muscles. The resistance to momentum is an echo, a chorus of past injuries warning you to tread carefully. And yet, the truth remains, movement is freedom. The first step is the hardest, but also the most transformative. Once you have shifted, even by a hair's breadth, the landscape begins to change. The impossible wall is behind you, and you are now in a world where action is possible. The mind, startled by your audacity, has to recalibrate. The resistance does not vanish, but it weakens, often suddenly, as if shocked by your willingness to move at all. Notice how quickly momentum, once begun, transforms terror into excitement. The dread that clings to the threshold dissolves with every additional step. What was once dangerous becomes familiar, then exhilarating. The energy once bound up in fear is released as creativity, engagement, even joy. But none of this is available to you until you accept the risk, until you let the body tremble, the mind protest, and move anyway. Here is the crux. Momentum is not about eliminating fear, but about moving with it. The trembling is not a sign to stop, but a sign that something alive is waking up within you. The terror of momentum is the terror of transformation. It is the price you pay for possibility. Let yourself reflect on this tension. If freedom is what you want, you must accept the cost. The unknown, the risk, the temporary loss of comfort. The first step will never feel safe, but it is the only way to trade the certainty of the present for the potential of the future. Now, as the chapter closes, sense the energy gathering in your own life, the pressure that builds before the leap. You have learned how to begin gently, how to honor the unstarted moment, how to slip through the cracks of resistance. But the next question is sharper, stranger. Why do microscopic actions trigger titanic shifts? Now that you've tasted movement, what happens when the tiniest act reprograms your reality? The terror of momentum is a teacher. Its lessons are not about safety, but about transformation. The only way to know what is possible is to move, even when every cell resists. Why do microscopic actions trigger titanic shifts? Now that you've tasted movement, what happens when the tiniest act reprograms your reality? Settle into the question. Beneath the blaring advice of self-help, beyond the thundering promises of overnight transformation, something tiny stirs. A movement so subtle it is almost invisible. This is the revolution of micro-actions, the rebellion that begins with the smallest gesture and ends with the rewriting of your world. It is the mutiny of the ordinary, the uprising of what is easily dismissed. For so long, you have been taught to chase change in giant leaps, grand gestures, heroic schedules, ambitious resolutions. These are the currency of those who want to break free. Yet, as you have learned, the greater the ambition, the stronger the resistance. The more epic the plan, the more overwhelming its shadow. The walls grow higher, the doubts grow louder, and the cycle of inertia spins on. But what if the secret is not to scale the wall, but to slip between its stones? What if the code to escape is written in acts so small they go unnoticed by the very resistance designed to stop you? The micro-action, a 2-minute email, a scribbled outline, a single page read, seems insignificant. Yet, in these micro-movements, the brain's alarms stay silent. The invisible hand does not stir. You are not storming the gates, you are tiptoeing past the guard. Why do microscopic actions have such disproportionate power? The answer is as much physics as psychology. Every system, left undisturbed, settles into a pattern, a state of equilibrium. Your life, too, finds its groove, its familiar grooves and routines. When you attempt a massive overhaul, you trigger alarms. This is not how things are done. Danger. Retreat. But a tiny act does not threaten the system. It does not announce its intentions. It is a whisper, a barely detectable nudge that tilts the balance without waking the sentries. The science of change reveals this paradox. The smaller the action, the less resistance. The less resistance, the more likely the action will be repeated. The more often a thing is repeated, the more it becomes reality. What began as a microact soon acquires momentum, and the mind, instead of fighting, adapts. This is normal, it concludes. This is what we do now. In this way, reality itself is reprogrammed, not by thunderclap or earthquake, but by the slow, quiet erosion of the old by the new. Pause and notice the pattern in your own life. The days you just open the document but do not write, just walk for 5 minutes instead of running a marathon, just ask one hard question. These are the days the future shifts. The step is so small it escapes the radar of fear. The act is so quick it doesn't demand commitment. Yet these are not meaningless gestures. Each microaction is a wedge, a chisel, a seed. Left alone, a seed seems powerless. Planted, watered, repeated, it splits stone. Here is where the mutiny begins. The tyranny of perfection, of all or nothing, is overthrown by the persistence of the small. In the world of the microact, there is no room for failure because the stakes are so low. You do not need to become a new person overnight. You do not need to conquer your greatest fear today. All you need is to move so slightly that even your own mind barely notices. What happens, then, when the tiniest act reprograms your reality? The first shift is internal. Your identity begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who can't start, is always stuck, never follows through. Instead, you become the person who moves, however minutely, however imperfectly. The microaction is not just a physical gesture. It is an act of rebellion against the script of inertia. Notice, too, how quickly the world responds. The email you send in 2 minutes opens a door. The 5-minute walk creates a cascade of energy. The page read plants a question that blooms into a project. Momentum, once triggered, gathers speed. The act was tiny. The consequences are titanic. This is not exaggeration. It is the hidden arithmetic of reality, the law that governs all systems, from the growth of trees to the birth of galaxies. Small changes, repeated, become everything. Let yourself reflect on how this truth contradicts every story you have been told about change. You do not need to be ready. You do not need to know the end before you start. The path is not visible from the first step, but the microaction carves its own way. The smallest act of movement creates a crack in the armor of resistance. Through that crack, light pours in. Through that crack, possibility flows. The mind, once suspicious, begins to cooperate. Habits form almost accidentally. Each repetition is easier than the last. You begin to trust yourself. You are no longer paralyzed by the magnitude of the goal, because the goal is always just one tiny act away. The mutiny of microactions is not just a strategy. It is a revolution in self-perception. You become a person who changes not by force, but by invitation. Here, the old patterns unravel. Perfection is replaced by process. Fear is replaced by curiosity. The weight of needing to get it right is replaced by the joy of getting it going. The smallest acts, once ignored, are now celebrated. You realize that progress is not measured in grand victories, but in the daily rebellion of the ordinary. Let yourself feel the power in this. There is nothing too small to matter. There is no act beneath the threshold of transformation. In a world obsessed with spectacle, you have discovered the secret passage, the shortcut reserved for those willing to move in whispers. The microaction is the seed, the key, the lever that moves the world. Next, let the tension twist once more. If waiting to be ready is the safest plan, why does it keep you frozen? Now that you're in motion, is the urge to prepare your last, deadliest adversary? The mutiny has begun. The small is no longer insignificant. Every microact is a revolution. If waiting to be ready is the safest plan, why does it keep you frozen? Now that you're in motion, is the urge to prepare your last, deadliest adversary. Pause. Let your breath slow. Recall all the moments you've spent planning, preparing, getting ready, waiting for the stars to align before you acted. This is the comfort of safety, the promise of future perfection. To be ready is to be armored against risk, to have every variable accounted for, to move only when victory seems certain. You have been told your whole life that good things come to those who wait, that readiness is the foundation of success. But beneath this reassuring story, a subtle trap lies hidden. The more you prepare, the more you perfect, the less you act. Preparation, in its noblest form, is a rehearsal for action. In its shadow form, it becomes the ultimate stall. It is the enemy you never suspected, the voice that whispers, "Just a little longer, just one more checklist. Wait until you're sure." Notice the seduction in this voice. It feels wise, even responsible. To leap before you are ready is reckless, risky, dangerous. So you build your fortresses of readiness. Gather information, create elaborate plans, refine your tools, polish your intentions. But with every new layer of preparation, the moment of action slips further from reach. The fortress becomes a tomb. Ask yourself, how many times has the need to be ready kept you locked in place? Long after you had what you needed to begin? The truth is almost too simple to see. No one is ever ready, not truly, not completely. Life, at its heart, is a field of uncertainty. Every leap contains the unknown. Preparation, while comforting, can never erase the possibility of surprise. What, then, is really happening when you prepare and prepare but never act? Beneath the surface, a deeper fear is at work. Readiness becomes a shield against the discomfort of imperfection. As long as you are preparing, you cannot fail. As long as you are not in motion, your imagined success is flawless, untouched by reality. The myth of readiness is a dream of control, a way to hold the chaos of living at bay. But this dream is costly. Each moment spent in preparation is a moment stolen from experience. The project remains unwritten, the song unsung, the journey never taken. In waiting for the right moment, you trade the vibrant messiness of action for the sterile security of potential. The urge to prepare becomes your last, deadliest adversary, a saboteur wearing the mask of wisdom. Feel the discomfort in this realization. The world rewards preparation, applauds those who plan ahead, prizes the illusion of certainty. Yet all progress is built on the willingness to move before you are ready. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every creative leap has come from someone who acted in the presence of doubt. The courage to begin, unprepared, is the beginning of mastery. Consider how this shows up in your own life. The outlines you never fill in, the supplies you gather but never use, the research that grows and grows until it chokes the original impulse. Each act of preparation in excess becomes a wall between you and the world. The more you wait to be ready, the more you convince yourself that you are never enough. Here, the paradox sharpens. The impulse to prepare, so comforting in the short term, becomes suffocating in the long run. Motion, once begun, is now threatened by the very urge that once seemed prudent. The mind says, pause, go back, gather more. But the deeper truth is that action creates readiness, not the other way around. The myth of readiness is a trick of perception. It tells you that certainty is possible, that one more rehearsal will protect you from pain. But reality does not reward those who wait forever. The act of doing is the only teacher. Mistakes are the only way to learn. The courage to risk imperfection is the price of progress. Let yourself feel this tension. Every instinct cries out for safety, for assurance, for the comfort of knowing what comes next. But the real world does not care for your readiness. Life unfolds on its own schedule. The invitation is always to begin imperfect, uncertain, exposed. How, then, do you escape the trap? The answer is not to abandon preparation entirely. It is to recognize when preparation becomes avoidance, when the quest for readiness has become a prison. The key is to move, even while the voice of caution screams for more time. The courage to act while uncertain is the gateway to a life lived in motion. Notice how quickly reality shifts when you move before you are ready. The thing you feared loses its power. The act of starting reveals what cannot be discovered in thought alone. Action is a clarifying force. It exposes the gaps in your knowledge, but it also opens new doors. Each mistake is information. Each step is progress. Reflect on the lives of those who have changed the world. They began in uncertainty, with incomplete maps and shifting goals. They trusted the process of learning by doing, of growing through mistakes. The myth of readiness was never their guide. Curiosity, courage, and willingness to stumble. These were their companions. Feel the liberation in this. You do not need to wait until you are perfect. You do not need to earn your way into action. The universe responds to those who move, not those who wait. The desire to prepare will always tug at you, but you are free to begin at any moment. Next, let the riddle twist once more. If you are what you repeatedly do, can one absurdly small act mutate your entire identity? Now that action feels possible, what happens when it becomes inevitable? Let the myth of readiness crumble. The last adversary is revealed. The only way forward is through imperfection, through courage, through the audacity to act now before you are ready. If you are what you repeatedly do, can one absurdly small act mutate your entire identity? Now that action feels possible, what happens when it becomes inevitable? Pause for a moment. Let the world slow down. Feel the weight of your own history. A lifetime of habits, labels, and expectations layered gently across your mind. Your identity, you are told, is a mosaic made from the fragments of your past. The things you do most often become your definition, the story you return to in moments of doubt. I'm a procrastinator. I'm not a starter. I'm the kind of person who waits, who prepares, who stands back. These self-descriptions form quietly, almost invisibly, until they become the prison of who you believe yourself to be. But what if this story is not fixed? What if identity itself is more malleable, more fragile, more easily rewritten than you ever dared imagine? This is the unspoken truth. Who you are is not a monument, but a process, a living, breathing experiment. Each act is a brushstroke, each choice a small recalibration of the whole. And sometimes, just sometimes, the tiniest act can disrupt the entire system. Let this sink in. One absurdly small action. Sending a message, taking a step, opening a blank page, can begin to unravel decades of self-doubt and inertia. This is not hyperbole. The human mind is structured to seek consistency. When your actions contradict your beliefs about yourself, something has to give. Each time you act, even in the smallest way, you are teaching your brain a new story. I am someone who moves. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible at first. After so many years believing in your own stuckness, it feels impossible that a micro-move could make a difference. But the mind, watchful and adaptive, is always listening. The old stories start to sound less convincing. You hesitate and then you move anyway. You expect to freeze, but you don't. You wait for resistance, and it never fully arrives. The anomaly begins to spread. The definition of who you are starts to mutate. This is the paradox. The identity you think is solid is actually porous, alive, endlessly rewritable. If you are what you repeatedly do, then a new pattern, no matter how small, is the beginning of a new self. You become the person who writes, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You become the one who makes the call, even if your hand shakes. The act does not need to be dramatic. It needs only to be real. Why is this so hard to believe? Because the mind clings to the comfort of the known, even when the known is uncomfortable. This is just how I am becomes a shield against disappointment, a refuge from the risk of change. But what if you are not a fixed point, but a river? What if each act, each repetition, carves a new channel through the landscape of your identity? Consider how habits form, how rituals become personality. The first time you act, it feels like trespassing, awkward, alien, unnatural. The second time, a little less so. The third, the fourth, the 10th, each movement smooths the path, erodes the resistance, builds a sense of inevitability. Action becomes routine, routine becomes identity, identity becomes destiny. Notice, too, how the outside world begins to reflect this new truth. Others start to expect different things from you. Your environment subtly adapts, reinforcing the new behaviors you have allowed to take root. The world conspires, gently and without malice, to support your transformation. The smallest act, once invisible, becomes the axis around which your new self spins. But the shift is not always comfortable. The mind, ever watchful, will attempt to pull you back into the old shape. Doubt will flare. The urge to return to the safe territory of old labels will surge. Who do you think you are? The inner voice will sneer. You can't just become someone else. This is the last gasp of the outdated identity, desperate to survive. But each time you act, you build evidence against it. Each repetition is a vote for the person you are becoming. Let yourself feel the dissonance. It is the sound of evolution, of growth, of internal change made visible. You are not erasing your past. You are expanding the range of what is possible for you. The courage to act in spite of the old story is the birth of the new one. Now action feels possible. Now the impossible has become inevitable. This is the magic of momentum, the compounding interest of small deeds. One absurdly small act becomes a habit becomes a trait becomes the architecture of a new identity. The process is never finished, always in motion. You are not a finished sculpture, but a garden, tended, wild, unpredictable, alive. Why does this matter? Because the world is always asking you to define yourself. Employers, friends, even strangers want a story that is neat, packaged, explainable. But you do not owe anyone a fixed identity. You owe yourself the freedom to change, to rewrite, to become. As you notice this process unfolding, let yourself be curious. If you could choose a single microaction to repeat, a movement so small it barely counts, what would you want to become? What is the smallest habit that, if nurtured, would change how you see yourself? The answers are not written in stone. They are written, day by day, in the ledger of your living. In this way, action becomes who you are. The future is not a destination, but a direction. Each act is a step, each step a sentence in the new story you are writing with your life. You are not trapped in your past. You are free to move, to mutate, to evolve, one impossibly small act at a time. Now that action feels possible, what happens when it becomes inevitable? What new laws govern a world where barriers are no longer absolute, where the old boundaries of self and circumstance are pierced, again and again, by your willingness to move? Next, we test the edge of this new reality. If you can bypass any barrier in 5 minutes, what else in your life is a lie? Now that you've tunneled through the impossible, are you ready to question everything you've ever been told about human limits? You have begun to rewire your identity. The story is yours now, and it is still being written. If you can bypass any barrier in 5 minutes, what else in your life is a lie? Now that you've tunneled through the impossible, are you ready to question everything you've ever been told about human limits? Pause for a moment at the threshold. Feel the quiet after the storm of self-discovery, the strange calm that settles when the old walls have fallen. The world looks unchanged, and yet nothing is quite as it was. You have slipped through your barriers, undone the knots that held you in place, and found, beyond all expectation, that progress is possible, even easy, when the rules are not what you were taught. Here, at the far edge of the familiar, a new question rises. If the 5-minute quantum move could topple the great illusion of stuckness, what else is built on myths? What other so-called laws, accepted as truth, are really just assumptions waiting to be broken? What is left to fear if the wall was never solid in the first place? It is a destabilizing thought, this possibility that all limits are suspect. The impossible was only a boundary of belief, a fiction dressed as law. The moment you move, the spell breaks. You step outside the prison, look back, and realize the bars were air. Your mind, taught to expect resistance at every turn, is forced to remap reality. There is discomfort in this freedom. Certainty, even when painful, offers a kind of comfort, a frame that tells you what you can and cannot do. But freedom is wild. It is an invitation to venture into the unknown, to test the boundaries of every story you've inherited. Suddenly, the world is bigger than your old fears. Suddenly, the only real limits are the ones you're willing to accept. Notice how this new law takes root in the small spaces of daily living. You confront a task, feel the echo of old inertia, but now you know. A 5-minute action is enough to pierce the shell. You sense resistance, but it no longer has the same power. The game is changed. The old barriers are seen for what they are: fragile, reactive, dissolving at the slightest touch of motion. And if this is true for one problem, why not for another? Why not for all the places where you feel boxed in, held back, told to wait? If a quantum tunneling move can collapse procrastination, could it not also disrupt every other impossible you have accepted? The rules, it turns out, were negotiable all along. Let this realization unsettle you. What else might you do if you no longer believed in the solidity of obstacles? What projects could you start? What habits could you nurture? What dreams could you resurrect? If impossible was just a story told by someone who never tried the side door. The field is open, wild, and waiting for your experiment. Consider how the universe itself operates, not by brute force, but by improbable possibilities. Particles tunnel through barriers. Time is not fixed but elastic. Chaos births new forms out of apparent disorder. Nature is not as rigid as you were led to believe. The human mind, shaped by evolution to seek safety, is always wary of this freedom. Yet freedom is the true nature of things. Stuckness is the exception, not the rule. The new law of impossible progress is not a method, not a system, not another dogma to memorize. It is a challenge to your deepest assumptions. If 5 minutes can start a revolution, then every minute is a chance to change direction. You are no longer at the mercy of inertia. You are a quantum agent capable of tiny, decisive acts that add up to transformation. Feel the texture of this new possibility. Old labels lose their grip. Lazy, unmotivated, hopeless. These were artifacts of a world where barriers seemed absolute. Now you have proof otherwise. You have witnessed the power of microactions, the mutiny against the myth of readiness, the rewiring of identity by doing, not dreaming. You are living evidence that the rules can be broken, that the impossible is only a threshold, not a destination. This law invites you to experiment further. What if you questioned every story about your limits, every ceiling you once accepted as real? What if you tested the walls instead of trusting them? Progress is no longer a distant summit but a string of small, reckless acts, each one stretching the border of the possible. The greatest danger now is not failure, but timidity. To have seen the truth and refuse to act is the only real stagnation. You are called to curiosity, to audacity, to a gentle boldness that asks, again and again, what else might change if I just begin? The map is unfinished, the path uncertain, but that is precisely the point. Growth happens at the boundary, at the place where rules bend, at the intersection of doubt and motion. Let yourself be unsettled by this freedom. The comfort of limits is gone, replaced by the wild energy of becoming. You are no longer bound to wait for permission, for certainty, for the old vision of readiness. You are an agent of the possible, and the possible has no end. This is not a fantasy of endless, effortless victory. There will be setbacks, hesitations, days when the old wall reappears. But now you know the trick. The wall is not what it claims to be. Resistance, exposed to movement, evaporates. The universe rewards the bold, the curious, the ones willing to tunnel when everyone else pounds at the door. If you can bypass any barrier in 5 minutes, then perhaps you are already more free than you believed. Perhaps the only thing left to question is how far you want to go, how deeply you want to test the softness of your old constraints. The law is not move mountains with your mind, but move pebbles and watch the mountain shift. As the series draws to its edge, let yourself feel the strange calm of new possibility. You are standing where the known meets the unknown, where the old laws dissolve and the new ones are yours to write. The impossible has become permeable. Progress is now a habit, a choice, a birthright. Are you ready to question everything you've ever been told about human limits? Can you live in the open field, where the rules are only suggestions and every act of movement creates new territory? The invitation is open, and the next move is always yours. There is no resolution, no final comfort, only this: the knowledge that the wall was never as real as it seemed, and that the journey is made, one small act at a time, into an ever-widening universe.